Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
This is Ed Cohen in San Diego, California, a little after 8 a.m. in the morning here. The sun is shining. Last night we had a vicious thunder and lightning storm in San Diego. Very unusual. It's usually pretty dry here, but it came up from Mexico. So the streets are clean, the birds are chirping, and things are good here in San Diego. Ken Somers is in Southern Connecticut on Long Island Sound, and Dan Whitehead is somewhere in the UK. Hello, Dan, and welcome.
Hi. Well, thank you. Yeah, near London, for the record.
Okay, what part of London?
Well, near London. So I'm in one of the home counties surrounding London, which is called Essex. So I'm about 40 miles northeast of London.
Got it. So that's near Cambridge, right?
It's not a million miles away. Yeah, quite.
Yeah. Okay. And here's Ken Somers, our leader today.
Thank you, Ed. And hello to everyone. And Dan, I'm delighted that you're able to join us. Why don't you just take a moment to introduce yourself, and then we can get into our discussion.
Yeah, sure. So once again, thanks for inviting me on. In terms of my background, I've been in HR and talent, I guess, is the best way of describing it, talent acquisition, even more specifically, for just over 20 years. And prior to that, I was in sort of recruiting, executive search for a few years, finding my feet before I found my calling, which was HR, and doing it from an in-house perspective and a corporate staffing perspective. So that's where I've been ever since, and more recently have set up my own business focused on career coaching, but also doing some talent consulting work with clients, both individuals, but corporate clients too, and all around the world too.
Great. Well,
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
and I will add, because I'm sure that Dan is a little bit modest to do so. I've had the great pleasure of working with Dan in a corporate role, and he is a superb resource so anyone who is looking for career coaching, or if you're a business and you're looking for consultation on talent management, Dan is absolutely a great resource to go to. So without further ado, we'll jump into our discussion.
Yeah,
So,
and Dan, what is your website?
Yeah, it's www.citycareerlab.com. So that's the name of the company, City Career Lab, all one word. Don't ask me why the lab, but it certainly makes it sound more interesting. So that was part of the reasoning behind it.
Actually, I think it's very cool because it's like a workshop, and you're
That's right.
evolving and doing research and helping.
Yeah. It was either putting an I in front of City Career, or something like that. But no, I chose a lab at the end. So.
All right. Well, good luck on your research.
Thank you.
So Ken, is the Great Resignation caused because people don't trust the managers anymore, or what?
well, we're going to go right to Dan for that. And Dan, I'd love if you could, start by sharing your point of view on the Great Resignation. Among other things, is it real, or is this something that the press has made up for us to get us excited and buy newspapers?
Well, I think actually both are correct, right? I'm taking the middle ground on this. If you're looking for someone to really spin this up and really sort of turn this into hyperbole, then you've probably chosen the wrong person, i.e. a Brit, to do this, right? Because I'm always going to give it the sort of, slightly more cynical sort of view and balanced view of things. But, my view is that even earlier this year, so I was actually saying, I hadn't even heard of the Great Resignation until about Q1 this year, I think, or going into Q2. So my understanding of the summit that started in the States, I think a psychologist or a professor over there coined it back in 2019. But I was talking about this, hadn't called it anything, but I was talking about this on my website and some of the posts I was making, that predicting that there was going to be obviously more turnover and more movement and more talent mobility. the Great Resignation started coming into our consciousness over here in the UK. Yeah, it must have been about sort of Q2, and people have been talking about it a lot since. And obviously, LinkedIn has helped to sort of keep that reverberating around, talent markets everywhere. Is it happening? I would say, on balance, it is happening, but it depends how you define it. So, are more people resigning? I'd say on aggregate, yes, but it's not the case across all industries. In some industries, in some companies, turnover is actually lower, interestingly. But on aggregate, I say there is more movement that's going on, but it's not, it's not quite how the headline sort of reads, which is that everyone's resigning en masse, because I think that would be that would be something else.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. I think that there's a lot of drama that's been associated with this. Certainly in the United States, more people are resigning. I'm sure you're witnessing that in the UK and in other markets where you conduct business. One of the things that has been postulated as both a cause and a solution to the Great Resignation, we'll continue to use the term for lack of something more elegant, is the employee experience. And I'm wondering, from a talent perspective, have you seen any indications that the employee experience is a factor, either positively or negatively, in influencing people's behavior?
It is, but I suppose the Great Resignation, it was a term that was coined, and it was coming directly as a result of the pandemic, right? Where things shut down, and obviously everyone's employee experience, or even just general well-being, was impacted by that. So I think it's quite hard to unbundle some of this from the employee experience from the pandemic and vice versa, and but I think there's winners and losers. So some firms, I think, have acted really well throughout the pandemic and have been really clear in terms of their communication, consulting with employees, have really shown a more empathetic side, and so some firms have come out of this really well, and I think their brands will actually be stronger as a result of it. And there are other firms that have shown themselves up, have done the wrong thing, whether that's asking people to take a pay cut, making redundancies rather than, sort of delaying some of it, and so I just think that employee experience was already a trend before the pandemic, and it was already a focus, and the pandemic has just made, I suppose, amplified it, right?
No, and I think that's fair. And I'd be curious to get your perspective, without naming company names. So let's protect the innocent, or as it may be, protect the guilty. But, from your observations and your participation in the market, can you generalize on what sectors of the economy are doing a better job than others in terms of being sensitive to the employee experience during these difficult times?
Yeah, and one thing I didn't say at the top of the introduction was, my focus has always been on financial services, so that's where I spend the vast majority of my time. That's not to say I don't speak to other people too, but I would say even in financial services, I've seen good and bad. I've seen firms that have done this really, really well, and other firms that have come out of this really badly. So I don't know if the employee experience side of things is different by sector. I'm not sure about that, but certainly there is some evidence that the Great Resignation is showing up differently in different sectors. So, an example of that would be obviously hospitality, right? So that's coming back in a huge way, which is pretty much closed down as a sector, and now everyone's hiring people, hospitality, events, and that side of the economy's booming again. So they're having to take workers from other sectors, and there's a lot of people that felt very unhappy there. So there's a lot of movement. I think the healthcare sector is another one. There's a lot of movement, a lot of resignations. My wife's a nurse, so I hear a lot from her anecdotally around what's going on in our treasured NHS. But I think a lot of people work very, very hard over the last 18 months, and sort of had it up to here, right, with what they've been through, and probably feel that they've been worked very hard for very little in return. So yeah, there's a lot of movement in healthcare too. And I think actually on finance, I mentioned finance earlier, but I actually think finance is not experiencing that much in terms of resignations. I mean, there's some firms that are losing out, but as a whole, I'd say it's holding up relatively well. Yeah, that's my experience.
Good deal. I'd like to pick up on your comment about your wife's experience and recognizing that it's anecdotal.
Yeah.
But healthcare is a sector that people all over the world who will see this broadcast. There are healthcare systems in their countries, and I'm just wondering, based on, again, anecdotal insights from your spouse, are people leaving the profession because they're burned out, or are they worried about their own health, or are there other insights that perhaps you can share from her?
My view would be more down to sort of burnout rather than concerns around health. Now, obviously, there is potential for some sort of forced turnover, if you like, or involuntary turnover, if you believe the press, because obviously not everyone has taken the vaccinations, right? So you've got a lot of people in the healthcare sector that could be seeing some forced turnover, in some areas, right? Unless they actually sort of take that vaccination offer up. But I think it's more to do with burnout, Ken. That's from what I can tell, rather than necessarily concerns about their own sort of personal health. I think maybe this applies more in the UK than perhaps the US, because I think the pay in the healthcare sector over here is not as competitive as it is in the US. And I think because of that, a lot of people feel they're not being properly rewarded or recognised for the effort that's been put in, right? And I think a lot of people sympathise with that.
So I'd like to ask a question, if I may, about Brexit. Has that shown up on your radar?
Brexit was I guess Brexit was a big shock to the talent markets in the UK prior to the pandemic. So we've had an interesting time over here, in that we've been through our economy, which was stuttering, and also people weren't really investing in staff, certainly in senior hiring as well, and weren't investing in their business. Whilst Brexit was going through and we were waiting which way up they landed, then we sort of knew which way up we'd landed. I can't even think now whether it was 6 months, a year of sort of normal, and then the pandemic hit. So we've come through. We've had two big major humps really to contend with. But I think right now, depending on which side of the political fence you are, you could argue that actually things are, a little bit easier now from a Brexit perspective.
Fair enough. Well, taking us back to this Great Resignation theme, I'm wondering, again, based on your experience, your insights to the market, and the people you talk to, because I'm sure you talk to people all the time, what are the implications for the recruiters, the employers, the talent, and the candidates themselves? I mean, how is it playing out in the real world?
Yeah, great question. I mean, in the real world, there's a talent shortage everywhere. So irrespective of whether people are experiencing the Great Resignation, there's no getting away from the fact that there are talent shortages across the board. And I think the Great Resignation is making that felt even harder. Wherever you are, you only have to look at the number of advertised jobs. I think virtually every single market, certainly in the developed world, that measures job postings and vacancy rates and things like that, it's all gone up. It's all gone through the roof. I track it for financial services in the UK, just financial services, and I've been tracking it since January. Every single month, the vacancies and the postings have gone up. So you know that's very real. I would say, in terms of how the recruiters are experiencing it, there's two things to think about here. So you've got your agency recruiters and your headhunters on the one side. So they're making a lot of money. They're all doing rather well at the moment. You're also finding that they're a lot harder to pin down. So as a phenomenon where people are saying that, you know, they're getting blindsided or blanked by their recruiter, they're not getting called back. There's a lot of dissatisfaction around that in the candidate market. And part of it is just purely because they're so focused on serving their clients and trying to make money. And I think it's, you know, it's difficult for them to be everywhere, you know, at once. On the flip side, corporate recruiters, obviously that was my calling the last 20 or so years. So I would obviously be sympathetic with those guys, but they are completely overwhelmed at the moment. So I've had conversations with recruiting leaders and staffing leaders recently where, without naming names, but it, you know, I think I even said it jokingly that they look like rabbits in the headlights. You know, they were sort of, the volumes were through the roof, the demand, you know, the appetite for hiring and bringing people in is just really at peak at the moment. And you have to remember that hiring teams internally were decimated in 2020. So I'd say on average, maybe 25% of recruiters across industry were laid off. And even though there's a lot of hiring going on for recruiters right now, it's only really taken us back to the levels we were at in 2020. So that's what we're, you know, that's what's happening on the ground. And I think my experience just from talking to talent, from candidates, the people that I coach and talk to on a daily basis, you know, they're happy that there's more choice out there. They're happy that there's more jobs, but there's an increasing feeling that there's a black hole, and you know, there's more recruitment online, but there's less people actually talking. You can't get hold of headhunters. In-house people are overwhelmed and overworked. They're not responding to emails. So really, people are just throwing in applications, but not getting anything back. So that's anecdotally what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I'll add, I'm hearing exactly the same thing from some of my clients. The talent acquisition space right now is just a really tough place to be, no matter which side of the equation you're on.
Yeah, I agree, and it's sort of heartening to know that I'm still getting approached about jobs in talent acquisition, even though I sort of moved out of that space full time in January. So you know, that tells you something. They must be desperate. They're still, my phone's still ringing, but literally, you know, I think there was some big data in the UK that came out that the most popular job title posted across the internet at the moment is recruiter, or a variant of recruiter, or talent acquisition. So that tells you something, right?
So let's go back a little bit, if it's okay, just to summarize and then go on. People have quit, they've quit, and so that opens up new positions,
Yeah.
and that's where the drive is, correct? Because you know, leaders, let's call them leaders, they want to have somebody new in their report, right? So a new personality, maybe a new opportunity to grow, and so they want to see who's out there, and they're looking. And then, how do you make a decision? I mean, how can you trust what you're reading about someone's background and their personality?
Yeah. So if you rewind 20 odd years ago, I think when I was just over when I was involved in recruitment. I think the fashion then for CVs, as we call them over here, and resumes over there, the fashion was to come out with all these, descriptive words and, using nice adjectives and calling yourself a team player and, just as open to working on your own or as part of a team and so forth. But, the fashion for those types of descriptive sort of or personal summaries has gone away somewhat now. I think it's less around using those types of words and actually just hard facts and data around what you've done, what you've produced, the problems you can solve, the challenges that you can face into. So I think it's not so much about reading, what someone's like. I think actually people now come to the table with a blank canvas in that respect, but what they do is they come with a track record of employment and achievements and what they've done. And then it's up to the hiring manager and the interview team to actually work out, how good they are. And I think in the US, certainly as a market, referencing comes into it a lot. And some people do that really well and others not so well. I think increasingly you even find that people are looking at online brand, someone's online personal brand, where they show up on LinkedIn, what papers have they written, what talks have they, or seminars or webinars have they done, are they an expert, subject matter expert? So there's a lot of referencing you can do actually without even talking to someone now that can help you build a bit of a picture of what someone's like. And even to the extent that, you might be able to find a video online and actually sort of see how they communicate in ways, obviously, a few years ago, that was unthinkable.
Hi, this is Ed, and I thank you for tuning in to Global TV Talk Show, a unit on globalbusinessnews.net. We broadcast to the world, as you know by now. So I wanted to make sure that you understand that our programs are advertising supported. We're grateful for co-sponsors, advertisers. They have a marketing budget coupled with a strong desire to be associated with our top quality program. And of course, I'm grateful. Thank you. So for the next few minutes, you're going to see some commercials. It's mostly very low key, and our prices are very, very reasonable. Our exposure for the advertisers go 12 months and beyond. Some of our advertisers have been with us since March, April of 2020. And Google Analytics has tracked over 125,000 what they call audience page views, which means you looking at this page, that's a page view. Now, if you happen to go to one of our other shows or to our radio broadcasts or to our newspaper or magazine, those become additional page views as measured by Google Analytics. And so when they say 125,000 since spring of 2020 up through Labor Day, a month ago, that's pretty good numbers. And the past 30 days, Google Analytics has measured just under 6,000 audience page views. And that, according to them, is a 42% increase in audience participation over the month of August. So thank you very much. Well, here's our advertisers, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes or so, and we'll proceed with this interesting conversation. Thank you.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
And by youre.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at youre.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Become a global player in your field.
Cross Culture to Go provides virtual support for your global business and career success.
We can help you thrive in 140 plus countries and markets.
On the web at crossculturetogo.com.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
Hi, I'm Sergey Gorbatov.
I'm Angela Lane.
Together we are researchers, writers and practitioners in the field of human resources.
And we've also been multi-country, multi-assignment career expats.
We owe our professional development and growth to a very large extent to the international assignment opportunities that we have had.
But in a world where distributed work may become the norm, we also want to understand what will happen to the nature, duration, and purpose of international assignments.
Together with our colleague, Julian Dalzell from the University of South Carolina, we're undertaking a study on the future of expatriation.
And we'd value your contribution. You can participate in this important study by completing a simple 10-minute questionnaire.
Access the questionnaire by typing in your browser tinyurl.com/expert study. That's tinyurl.com/expert study. You can also find the link here on Ed's website next to this video.
Thank you for joining us in this study. In return for your contribution, we'll provide you with a copy of our research.
And of course, you'll be invited to an exclusive webinar hosted by Ed, where we will share our findings right here on Global Business News.
And so please go to tinyurl.com/expat study. Take the survey so that we can better understand the future of expatriation.
So let's talk about this, what we're doing right now, this Zoom or anything, Teams or whatever. But, you know, I just call it TV because it is. So you're looking at me for the first time. We've never met.
Yeah.
And so I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for new customers, just like you are. but that is looking for a job, isn't it? So they would people they would look at me as, well, who's this guy? And you know, why is he doing talk shows? or maybe there's something there. Wait a minute. You're getting a look at me, not only what I look like in the red wall in my dining room here, but it's it's my personality, my ability to communicate to stranger, you know, and about a topic that I'm not an expert in. And so if I could do that, okay, can you use that skill in a position you know about? And you would never ever, this is a supposition here, you would never ever get to know me if we didn't do this, okay? So therefore, I would think that a Zoom talk show kind of thing is the future, and it's now, as to bringing belief to what you see in a resume or CV.
I totally agree. I mean, and it all comes back to personal brand, Ed. I mean, it's really whatever's out there, discoverable, be that online or, you know, in other forums, anything that's out there that's discoverable about you. You know, what does it say about you? Is it consistent? Does it add up? Does it, you know, and when I say consistent, you know, when I look at your resume and then I see you online or your LinkedIn profile, or, you know, does it all sort of add up to the same thing, or is this person sort of slightly confused, or their profile slightly confused in terms of what they're doing? So there's a lot of that, and don't underestimate the amount that potential employers will dig around.
So it all, but it all depends on the position and requirements, because I mean, this is an insight into, just use me for an example, as to customer facing position. All right. Exactly. I am not a mathematician. I'm not a technologist at all, but I'm pretty good at concepts and dealing with strangers. So if you can hire me, hey, I'll consider it. but to supplement getting to know someone, which takes time and investment, where you have a stack of applications that you're going through, and you've got a hiring manager who's banging on you to say, I need this person. I need to show growth, because the C-level is coming down and saying, well, how are we doing on this and that? And man, so you're in a squeeze, aren't you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But look, there's lots of technology out there as well now. There's platforms that, before we all started using Zoom as though it was, you know, second nature. But there are platforms out there for video interviewing, which don't just allow you to talk live like this, but, you know, I could record 3 or 4 questions, let's say, for a particular role, and I can just post those questions on a video, send that video to everyone that's applied for my job, and then they would submit their answers on that platform, and that would allow me to just go through very, very quickly. And like you say, Ed, is sort of, you know, it's another level. It's screening plus. And so, you know, that technology is out there as well, and I think, you know, that's only going to increase in time too.
So Ken, I want to get you to speak here, and so I'm going to stop talking. But I once had a disastrous video interview. I wasn't looking for a job. I was looking for an account, you know, pay me some advertising money. Okay, and I got stuck, and I made a mistake. I said, okay, I'm not going to be in my office in front of the screen like I am now, and everything's organized and controlled. I'm going to be in my car, and I could pull over at 2 o'clock and call you using FaceTime or, you know, whatever on the phone, video, Google, And I got to tell you, that backfired on me because that guy who didn't know me from a hole in the wall saw the phone jumbling up and down, or I wasn't holding it right, or the sound was muffled. And, I don't know whether he didn't like my haircut or what, but, we just didn't jive at all. And I mean, that account, missing that potentially would have been like a $10,000 deal for me if I had secured it. Man, I'll never forget that experience. And so, what do you think about that? I mean, because that's the bad side of doing video. And if it's not in a controlled environment, it's a big mistake, I think.
Well, I think you're right. And I think that, this is a great segue actually to one or two of the other things that I wanted to make sure we asked Dan about, because as you think about the trends in the talent acquisition dimension of human resources and business management, I do believe, and Dan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I do believe that employers are getting more comfortable with various video settings. Now, if I'm interviewing for a job and it's really important to me, I would hope that I would take the time to prepare a proper environment where the camera will be stable, the acoustics are reasonable, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is people are on the go. And it's not, I can't count the number of times where I've been driving and someone will call and say, can I talk to you about X, Y, or Z? And you either pull over and make the best of it, or you say, gee, this isn't a great time. But Dan, what are your thoughts? What kinds of trends are you seeing in terms of use of video? I mean, you mentioned the pre-recorded questions, which I'm seeing more and more frequently. But there are other trends that are emerging as we hopefully come out of this pandemic environment and presumably move to an endemic environment of COVID.
No, I mean, there's lots of trends as it relates to sort of tools and technology that recruiters are using, and then what I would sort of term sort of techniques, if you like. So, talked about sort of video, and certainly in the height of the pandemic, unless you switched very quickly to using video conferencing facilities to interview people, you weren't going to hire anyone. It's fair to say anyway, in 2020 there wasn't that much hiring going on anyway until the summer, but it was essentially you weren't going to hire anyone unless you relied on video, right? And also just even in terms of onboarding, and people had to get very savvy around how they onboarded people, even just the logistics of sending out laptops and getting them set up for their first day working from home remotely or wherever it was. So those things have all sort of moved on, and I think are now embedded and actually for the better. So what you'll see now is that recruitment process is actually sort of speeding up a little bit, because where you would have the logistics of actually trying to arrange face-to-face interviews, you'll find that people are comfortable now making even quite senior hires about actually meeting someone in person, and that just wouldn't happen, pre-2020. So that has had to happen, and it's still happening, which is great for a flexibility. And obviously you're in a big country. Over here in the UK, you can get anywhere within a few hours, and in financial services, we call it the square mile, because everyone's located pretty centrally in the city of London, but it still makes things a lot easier. And in somewhere like the US, if you had to wait, let's say, to fly someone from Boston to New York to make the offer, you might have to wait until that person could book a flight, get a flight, sort of get to the office. Whereas now you can just set the interview up. It just speeds things up. So that's one thing. In terms of other, trends that have been around for the last few years and continue, it's the use of AI, in terms of decision making, which, people are a little bit sort of scared of, and actually create some really bad sort of headlines. My personal experience is more often than not, it's a human being that's actually assessing your application than a machine. But AI can be useful in certain situations in terms of making suggestions to the recruiter, helping to sort of prioritize a list, if you like, or shorten the list. But it's not, apart from in the highest volume industries, maybe like retail or areas where you might be getting 1,000 applications. You know, it's not used as much as people think. So that, you know, that's probably something else that's going on out there. And you know, what else can I tell you? I'd say that the other thing is talent analytics, and it's something I'm really passionate about. So obviously we use big data to influence all sorts of decisions, you know, in society, you know, these days. But increasingly you're finding that HR and talent acquisition teams are using big data to influence decisions around where do we base that position, i.e. where's the availability of talent, where are the skills, and you know, I think there's lots of uses of that right now, and you know, whether that's US labor market data, but you know, data around, you know, sort of university graduations and you know, right down to you know, employers and who's doing the hiring and who's doing the firing. So yeah, that's another trend I've seen.
Fair enough. I did want to ask you, you know, earlier you mentioned that you've been tracking the number of postings for positions.
Yeah.
And the slope is continuing to go up. What are your insights or observations on the ratio of permanent positions to contractor positions? Is that changing post-COVID or during COVID, or?
Yeah, so what we basically saw in the immediate effect of the pandemic was actually the contractors were coming off the payroll, right? As organizations were looking to slash cost and just sort of, you know, retrench, I guess. And then what's really been happening since then has been a very hard rebound in terms of contingent labor, contractor labor. And I think that's partly because, you know, it's seen as more agile, right? You know, and as firms need to staff up, there's talent shortages. Some cases, they're not quite sure whether they need a permanent resource or if they just need a resource. So it makes more sense to hire a contractor contingent worker. So I actually, yeah, it went away. It was a market that contracted quite you know, in a big way, and has bounced back, you know, just as hard, if not more.
Yeah, and again, anecdotally, that's what I've been observing as well. It's I think it's all part of what is emerging as a gig economy.
Yeah,
and I believe we're going to see more and more people have extended periods of their career in gig roles, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it does give a lot of flexibility and opportunity. So.
No, I've been very passionate about that, and you know, I think talent mobility is key going forward. I think firms need a much more agile workforce, and actually what the pandemic's done is prove that, in that, you know, they need to redeploy talent when you know, it all hits the fan, right? They need a workforce that, you know, they can use in a different way in different places at different times, and so you know, maybe a greater mix of permanent sort of freelance and consulting and then also contractor would make sense.
Fair enough. I know that we're pretty much out of time here. One thing I did want to ask you before we let you go is, any thoughts on the candidate experience, and any generic advice, because we don't want to tap into your livelihood here, give away too much free, but any generic advice you'd offer to candidates in terms of how they can best position themselves for success in this market?
The first thing I'd say is be really clear about what it is that you want. I find too many people I speak to are unclear on that point, and find that they're not focused in one area or another. So they end up spreading their bets, and then none of those bets come in. So I think if you're much more focused, and it doesn't have to be one thing, it could be a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, you're much more likely to get what it is that you want. And the second thing I would say is, and then it's just aligning your value proposition specifically to what it is that you want. So again, you can't do that unless you're focused on what you want and you have something in mind. Then you can't align your value proposition with that, because it could be 1,000 different value propositions. So decide on what it is that you want, or the types of a smaller number of roles that you want to go for, and then align your value proposition, which means all of your assets, like your resume, your LinkedIn profile, anything else online, and make sure it speaks to that.
I've got a couple of questions, if I may. DE&I and handicapped, disadvantaged people. Is this still on the front burner and during this crush that you're talking about, or is it something to consider, but you're not going out of your way now because you've got higher priorities? Or am I saying this wrong? What is the reality with DE&I, which is very important, of course, and giving handicapped people a role? 2.5, 3 years ago, that was a rage. And so what's happened with that?
Ken, you want me to go on that one?
Well, I'll be happy to start. And so I would say, Ed, that diversity, equity, and inclusion is as hot or hotter than ever. Certainly we had a very difficult summer in the United States last year, with various social issues coming to the fore. And without getting political, a lot of these issues are far overdue for attention. So I would say, in my experience, DE&I is hot, hot, hot. One of the things I'm noticing is that there's a seemingly endless demand for diversity, equity, and inclusion talent at the corporate HR levels to drive better results in businesses. But Dan, I don't know what you're experiencing there.
No, I'd say it's exactly the same. But when the chips are down, and whether it's the economy or like the pandemic major headwinds that we've all experienced, I think sometimes these things get forgotten about a little bit, right? Not necessarily discarded, but put to one side, because everyone's just focused on how are we going to get through this? How are we going to keep the company running? How are we going to hit targets, all that sort of thing. But so it does feel to me like some of it was put to the side. Obviously, that doesn't include what you're referring to in the US, and obviously the big focus on things like the Black Lives Matter movement, and that's been something that's been a focus over here, that's spread over to the UK too. And I think what you'll find is where companies have maybe placed that to one side, it's their workforces haven't let them forget about it. And certainly the younger generations, they're demanding it from their employers now, and so they won't let their employers put it to one side for long. That's for sure. So no, very much in scope again, and like Ken said, it's a big market, not just for recruiters, but for DE&I specialists too.
Well, Dan, I thank you so much for this deep dive, and that's very practical information. And I'm sure some of our audience is going to reach out to you. And I thank you. I thank you so much. I welcome you to come back on Global TV Talk Show. Ken, are you wanting some time here to summarize and go forward? All right, so we'll just hang in here a minute. So working remotely, work from anywhere, is that winding down, or is that going to be job specific?
So it's got to be job specific, right? I think if you're in manufacturing or or certain jobs it's harder to do remotely. But I think in the service industries, professional services, financial services, it's an easier play. And even I was about to mention healthcare, but even increasingly we're seeing internet doctors and vets and other stuff being done remotely too. So no, it's very much in play. I think more jobs can be done remotely, and I think more people will be hired on that basis too, which just opens things up, which is great.
Yeah, Ken, we're talking about remote stuff, remote
Yeah.
working, and I want to throw it back to you to do a summary and talk about our series.
Sure. So before either of us forget to do so, I want to thank Dan for his time, his insights, the sharing of his experience.
Yeah, it's great.
Dan, we touched on a lot of topics, and if you're willing, I think I'd love to have you come back and do a deeper dive on some of what we discussed. I think that there'd be great interest in various of the topics we addressed today.
Yeah, especially when we get into Poland and Netherlands and India, all these different perspectives. I'd love to have you join that kind of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just.
I'd love to.
Great. Be careful, Dan. We will invite you back. So what Ed was referring to is, I'll briefly explain that this is actually part of, actually Dan is our first guest for what will be a series of discussions about what's going on in the world of HR, with a particular focus on how the pandemic has influenced businesses and how HR people in various disciplines in HR are responding to that. And by way of a preview of coming attractions, over the next 2 to 3 months, we will have guests that many of them are already lined up. We're going to have a team of HR business partners from India come in and talk about what they're experiencing in their market. We have a data privacy expert from Germany who will be joining us to talk about data privacy in general, but more specifically, some of the implications of the pandemic for data privacy. And Dan, better than most of the US audience, that data privacy is legitimately a big deal on the continent and in the UK, and increasingly will be the case the rest of the world. We'll have a compensation expert, bringing in a senior HR generalist who happens to be based in the Netherlands, but he's in a global role, working on bringing in a senior HR leader from Japan, and the list goes on. We've got quite an array of really talented, experienced people. And I think one of the differentiating features of this series is that, with all respect to the ECM editions, these are going to be discussions
right,
with people who are on the front lines, dealing with the real world every day and sharing their experiences and what's working and what's not working. So very pragmatically focused.
And just a quick add, I've been able to secure some time for Ken to talk with a friend of mine who's with a major pharmaceutical company, and he's just relocated from Madrid into Southern California. And I'm talking with him this Friday, and I invited Ken to join, and his focus is Latin America for this pharma company. And then I'm pretty sure he's going to be interested, Ken, to join us after that. So we're growing worldwide, one step at a time.
Dan, thank you again. Ed, thank you for hosting us, and look forward to sharing what we hope to be valuable insights with the audience. And with that, I'll say farewell for now. Stay well, stay safe.
Yeah, be well. Nice to meet you, Dan.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you for being on Global TV. Take care.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.